Good morning. Well, on weeks when I'm kind of struggling to think about what to talk about, my Monday morning musings, I'll often go and look at what happened on this day in history. And sure enough, I found that on January the 8th, there were some interesting patterns that have taken place throughout history. Back in 1902, there was a New York assemblyman by the name of Francis Landon who got a bill passed that criminalized men who turned around on the street and looked at women that way. Only 2 years later, on January the 8th, 1904, Pope Pius X outlawed low-cut dresses in the presence of churchmen. And it was 14 years later, in 1918, that Mississippi became the first state to ratify the 18th Amendment, which authorized the prohibition of alcohol. All three of these events were attempts to legislate morality. But if we look at it today, none of those three legislations are still on the books. They didn't work. They were ineffective. And why is that? Because legislating morality never changes the person. We continue to try to legislate morality, but ultimately it never changes the behavior of people because our tendency, our desire to do those things that we're attempting to outlaw comes from within. Jesus talks about this in Mark chapter 7, verses 20 to 23. It says, "And he said, what comes out of a person is what defiles him. For within, out of the heart of man, come evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, coveting, wickedness, deceit, sensuality, envy, slander, pride, and foolishness. All these things come from within, and they defile a person." So if our problem is within, how then do we change it? How do we get rid of these behaviors? Well, the Apostle Paul talks a lot about this. In Romans 12, verse 2, he says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." In Galatians 4:22, he takes up a similar theme. He says, "You were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your minds." What we need in order to change behaviors in this world is a resetting of our minds. And how do we do that? Well, in Matthew 22, Jesus says you should love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And in John 14, he says, "If you love me in that way, then you'll keep my commandments." Your behaviors will change. So I want to challenge you this week as we're still in the beginning of a new year. Those behaviors, those thoughts, those desires that continue to trouble you, continue to draw you away. Make a resolution, make a decision to transform your mind, to change and renew the heart within you, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind, and to live the life that he has called you to live. Have a great week.